Raise your fists together. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sonia Whitaker, National Education Policy Director for Push for Excellence. And on behalf of the Rainbow Push Coalition, we'd like to thank you so much for giving of your gift of time and joining us on our Saturday morning forum. We'd also like to thank Word Network for bringing you to us and us to you. And yet we recognize that there are many of you that are watching us right now on Facebook Live. If you're doing so, we'd like to ask that you like our page. And for the many of you that are watching us right now on YouTube Live, we'd like to ask that you subscribe to our page so that you may gain immediate access to all of the content that we have in store for you. And speaking of content, we can't do this without you. We need your financial support, and we've made it really easy for you to give. You can simply take that cell phone of yours right now and hold it to the QR code and give right on the spot. You may also take that same cell phone and simply text the word PUSH to 41444. Text PUSH to 41444. And if you prefer, you can simply go to our website at rainbowpush.org and click on the donate button. We want to take this opportunity to also make sure you do not miss out on Monday. It's happening. It's going down. The MLK Breakfast. Push Excel is hosting the Dr. King Breakfast in live and in person this year, and we can't wait to see you there. All you got to do to reserve your spot in that place, the Marriott Marquis, downtown Chicago, on this coming Monday, is simply go to rainbowpush.org and get your ticket immediately. Now, whatever you do today, don't touch that dial. Sit tight. We'll be right back because the push is on.
Please join the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. and Push Excel co-chair, the Honorable Judge Greg Mathis and the Push Excel family for the 33rd Annual Martin Luther King Breakfast on January 16th, 2023. Honorees include the original Dream Girl on Broadway actress and Emmy Award winner Sheryl Lee Ralph, along with the Honorable Illinois Secretary of State and founder of the Jesse White Tumblers, Mr. Jesse White. Other honorees include Commissioner Natalie Hall, activist Gentoo Brown, the Chicago Inventors Organization, and Chance Light Education. Please join us in celebrating the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at our Blueprint for Life breakfast on Monday, January 16th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Marriott Marquis, Chicago. Tickets can be purchased at rainbowpush.org. We look forward to seeing you there.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is without a doubt one of the most inspiring men of history. His life and legacy touched so many people, young and old, rich and poor, men and women, black and white.
His call for equality. His demand for freedom.
And his message of love lives in the consciousness of anyone who has read his writings.
Ring in the heart of anyone who has heard him speak. and echo in the souls of all who have heard him preach.
In life, he encouraged many people who were broken down and tried to use their faith to move mountains of racism, injustice, and inequality. In death, he has inspired us to rise out of our low statuses and to keep moving to higher heights, to keep on keeping on, and to keep moving forward.
If you can't fly, then run.
If you can't run, then walk.
If you can't walk, then crawl.
But whatever you do,
But whatever you do,
You have to keep moving forward. Keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward.
It won't matter so much how we get there, but that we get there. Closer and closer to realizing the truest and highest potential of humanity. To love one another and to esteem each other with the same unconditional love.
But what do you do when you love and they don't love you back? The same thing Dr. King did. What did Dr. King do? He kept moving forward.
when Dr. King was 3 years old, his best friend was a white boy. One day when they were 6, the boy told Dr. King that they couldn't be friends anymore. When Martin asked why, his friend said it was because he was black. Dr. King experienced racism, but he did not give up.
He kept moving forward.
Dr. King was 15 years old when he got accepted into Morehouse College after skipping 2 grades. He had to study hard to do well in college being so young. But when he encountered challenges studying while pursuing his education, he did not give up.
He kept moving forward.
Dr. King was a young pastor. Some people didn't believe that he was old enough to lead a church. But people didn't believe in him because of his age. He didn't give up either.
He kept moving forward.
Dr. King became an activist shortly after he moved to Montgomery. Some people did not think he was experienced enough to mobilize the citizens. He did not give up.
He kept moving forward.
Dr. King had a big family. He was a father and a husband. When he was fighting for us, he had to be away from them a lot. They missed him and wanted to see him in their lives, but he didn't give up.
He kept moving forward.
And we must do the same. Have you ever been in a position where you experienced discrimination? Have you ever been in a situation where people didn't believe in you and you felt like giving up?
I recall experiencing racism as a grade school student. A little white boy would attempt to touch my afro, and this was utterly annoying, disrespectful, and it felt like remnants of racism. I reported the matter to the teachers and the principals, and of course, they just claimed that the little white boy was just curious about my hair. They also said that they are fascinated about my perfectly manicured afro because they had never seen such well-shaped hair.
Keep moving forward.
In middle school, I had always noticed that when the girls had done something that seemed inappropriate or was disrespectful or insulting to somebody, the teachers would always just kind of let them slide by on it. They wouldn't really ever get reprimanded. But when the guys did something that was similar, and when the guys did something that was disrespectful or inappropriate, they never got to slide by. They always got reprimanded.
Continue d'avancer.
I was bullied, not by a student, but by my teacher. Not by what I could do or what I couldn't do, but because of my skin color.
Zensi Tukakeru. I remember one time I was at my physician's office getting a routine checkup, and the doctor asked me,
Hi, Chris. Did you eat breakfast this morning?
Yes, I did.
What kind of cereal did you eat this morning?
I didn't eat cereal.
But I thought you said you ate breakfast. Oh, you must have ate Takis this morning.
This week in school, I was approached by one of my new friends, and we were talking about religion, and he asked me, Rutherford, are you Christian? And I said, yes, of course I am. And he said, I don't believe in all that. And he used the S word.
Can you relate to any of the stories you just heard? Has anything like this happened to you before? No matter what kind of discrimination you experience, don't give up. You will make it if you keep moving forward.
What about the families who are unemployed and looking for ways to make money? What about the families who are struggling and the children inside them who have nowhere to do their homework?
Keep moving forward.
What about women who work just as hard as men and on the same jobs as men that get paid less than men?
Keep moving forward. What about the effects of segregation? Unequal schools, unequal hospitals, unequal access to healthcare and technology.
Keep moving forward.
What about the children affected by joblessness and homelessness? The children who are hungry and don't have enough food to eat at home. What should they do?
Keep moving forward.
What about the people who are angry and frustrated because of police brutality and other kinds of mistreatment because of the color of one's skin?
Keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward and you will get there. At your destination, you soon will arrive.
Whether crawling or walking or flying on wings, you'll get there. Just keep hope alive.
Keep moving forward, even if you are afraid, even if you are low to the ground.
Forward ever. Backward never.
Don't let anything turn you around.
And so just as I say, we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around. We aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't really matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place.
But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to just go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land.
I might not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land.
And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
What would Dr. King do?
We must keep moving. We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant, the National Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and I want to thank you for joining our Saturday morning forum. You know, this week was historic, meaningful, and very uplifting as DeMar Hill, a young football player, 24 years old, for the Buffalo Bills, had a tragic incident live and in living color before the entire world. And it caused all of us to believe in the number 3. And as I speak, DeMar is home recovering with his family. It proves that prayer still works, and we are so very thankful that he is on his way to recovery. You know, as we focus our attention on our nation's capital, we once again want to salute Jonathan Luther Jackson, our national spokesperson, who is now the congressman of the 1st Congressional District in the state of Illinois. You know, this week we saw our nation's democracy held hostage by 20 members of the GOP. For 4 days and 14 votes, it took 15. The 14 votes were won by the first African American from New York, the first African American minority leader from New York, Hakeem Jefferson, soon to be the majority leader, because we're not going to fight until we get it all. We're not going to stop fighting until we get it all. Our challenge is to realize how valuable this democracy is, and yet how fragile it is at the smallest attempt to unravel this patchwork that Reverend Jackson calls the Rainbow Coalition. You know, the work of Dr. King and marching and protesting and raising the nation's moral imperative to make this a more perfect union. This week in Chicago, we'll be celebrating Dr. King, and we'll be celebrating those foot soldiers that rode buses and marched in streets all over America to have a dream that was good for each and every one of us. You know, as we remember here in Chicago, and we'll be celebrating all over the country and many places around the world, it is our responsibility to ensure that the dream of Dr. King and this quest for hope of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson is synergized and syncopated with the beat of the drum major of peace that's bringing about change for those who are unemployed, unhoused, those who are uninsured, those who are living on the margins, those who live in communities of desperation all over America. Yes, this is our dream. Yes, this is our turn. This is our responsibility and our obligation to keep hope alive. I hope you enjoyed today's program, and thank you for the partnership.
Some folks celebrate Abraham Lincoln, so we're going to celebrate Martin Luther King's Day today. Don't let him out of here. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Dr. King. Happy birthday to you.
We know how fond you are of our president, Lyndon Johnson. And we know how you're supporting everything. I got this little cup for you, and I want this back because it's mine. And it says, let me read. It says, we are cooperating with Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty. Drop coins and bills in the cup. And we
one day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, and graduated as the valedictorian of Crozier Theological Seminary in 1951. King became pastor of a Baptist church in Montgomery, Alabama, and later completed his Ph.D.
Martin Luther King was a religious man. He was a pastor and looked at racism and all of the so-called separate but equal laws and the terrible treatment of people of color in the United States. And he said, this is absolutely wrong. This is against God's will. This is not recognizing the dignity of peoples. And he made us all face that in very powerful ways.
On the eve of Rosa Parks' refusal to move to the back of a city bus in 1955, King was chosen to lead a citywide bus boycott. 2 years later, King and a group of civil rights activists formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to conduct nonviolent protests for civil rights.
When Martin Luther King led the Alabama boycott, that was a major turning point in the fight for civil rights. What you saw was people who had been fractionized coming together as one, walking together with others joining the fight. This was when people, America, the world, stood up and said, whoa, what are we looking at here? An amazing time.
Inspired by Gandhi's activism, King worked with the SCLC to organize black voters and civil rights protests. In 1963, King was arrested at a march in Alabama. During his prison time, King wrote a rebuttal to an article denouncing his methods. His longhand notes on the margins of the newspaper became known as Letter from Birmingham Jail and was famously republished and studied in colleges across the country.
Martin Luther King was a man of God who believed that that calling necessitated social change in the present, and he put his life on the line for that calling.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty, we are free at last!
On August 28, 1963, King led more than 20,000 people in a massive demonstration at the Lincoln Memorial, where his speech, I Have a Dream, became a defining moment in civil rights history. Through his work, King helped pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and received the Nobel Peace Prize that same year.
Martin Luther King, according to Time in 1963, personified the civil rights movement. He took on one of the greatest challenges of his time and was one of the people that most influenced this very transformative time in American history.
Although King faced criticism from more militant black leaders, he continued his peaceful efforts toward both racial and economic justice. After delivering his I've Been to the Mountaintop speech at a rally in Memphis, King was assassinated the next day on April 4, 1968, while standing at the balcony of his motel room.
King's assassination was, I think, devastating for many people. But there's also a rising level of organization, and many people, King's assassination galvanizes them into many kind of black power movements across the country, many anti-poverty movements. So it's both a moment of despair, but also a moment of political flowering.
Posthumously, King was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1977 and a Congressional Gold Medal in 2004. Today, the Martin Luther King Jr. National Holiday continues to be honored on the third Monday of every January.
Please join the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. and Push Excel co-chair, the Honorable Judge Greg Mathis and the Push Excel family for the 33rd Annual Martin Luther King Breakfast on January 16, 2023. Honorees include the original Dream Girl on Broadway actress and Emmy Award winner Cheryl Lee Ralph, along with the Honorable Illinois Secretary of State and founder of the Jesse White Tumblers, Mr. Jesse White. Other honorees include Commissioner Natalie Hall, activist Gentoo Brown, the Chicago Inventors Organization, and Chance Light Education. Please join us in celebrating the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at our Blueprint for Life breakfast on Monday, January 16th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Marriott Marquis, Chicago. Tickets can be purchased at rainbowpush.org. We look forward to seeing you there.
Push for Excellence was founded by Reverend Jackson in 1975. 1975, Reverend Jackson challenged America to push for excellence, to challenge America to make sure that every child could have a high-quality public education. And every year, we have one fundraiser. It's our Push Excel Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Breakfast. It's held on the actual holiday, the Dr. King holiday. And we invite you, wherever you are, if you can join us in person, we will be at the Marriott Marquis Hotel. And we have this breakfast to, one, showcase our young people, what they're learning, what they're doing, and showcase the possibilities of what young people can and will do if they receive the appropriate investments in them. And then we highlight our scholarship program because we believe that every child should go to school and money should not be an obstacle. And then we showcase our oratorical program, our STEM program, and we want you to help us fund our programs. We have a college-bound program, we have a Historic Black College Tour, we have all these things for young people and their parents. And so what we need you to do is either join us at the annual scholarship breakfast or you give to us. The tables are $5,000 for corporate sponsors, $1,500 for an individual sponsor. The tickets primarily go to fund scholarships and Push Excel programs.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant, the Acting National Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and I want to thank you for your membership, your partnership, and your labor in helping us keep hope alive. You know, this broadcast reaches nearly 90 million people all over the planet, and as I look at the membership rolls week after week after week, I want to thank you. As a matter of fact, I want to thank Bishop Sun from Center, Florida, for sending your contribution this week. You are helping us make sure that we leave nobody left behind. You know, this pen I wear every week on my lapel. I wear it all over the world. I wear it all over the country, and people want to know, how can I get one of those pens? Well, guess what? I want to send you your 2023 pen, your membership pen. $35 helps us. $35 helps us. And yet, listen, I'm asking you for a special gift of $60. And why am I doing that? Because it commemorates this incredible, arduous journey that Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson has taken. And this year we're celebrating in such a major way. We'll be celebrating MLK in Chicago, and we'll be celebrating MLK in Detroit. You can see it on your screen. You can meet us in Chicago. You can meet us in Detroit. But guess what? The work never ends. The task is never done. And yet the day-to-day fight for a more perfect union is always at hand. You can help me right now. You see at the bottom of the screen, you can text the word PUSH to 41444, and you can make a contribution right now of $60. Or you can become a sustainer, a push sustainer, a reoccurring giver, and you can push that button on, go to www.rainbowpush.org, and let me help you with something. That $60 is going to help me serve bags of food. That $60 is going to help me serve coats in our winter coat drive here in Chicago and around the country. That $60 is going to help us send resources to students to ensure that they can afford books and toiletries and other expenses that they don't have to go outside of their network to receive, because Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson is keeping them in school. Guess what? You can do it right now. www.rainbowpush.org, or you can text PUSH to 41444. That $60 means so very much. And guess what? There are those of you could do $600, you could do $1,000, you could do $2,000, you could do $5,000, or some of our givers have given $10,000. You can do it right now as we do this work every day, whether it's in Atlanta, whether it's in New York, Silicon Valley, and several places all over the country. Your contribution ensures that when someone dials 773-FREEDOM on their dial and one of our operators answers that phone, they will get the help they need right now. Many times people cannot even afford a lawyer, can't afford a doctor, can't afford a counselor, and we are able to connect them with our national network of supporters and service providers to ensure that, guess what, whether you can afford it or not, we're always on the field fighting for you is what we do. So guess what? I need you. Reverend Jesse Jackson needs you. The nation needs you as we keep hope alive.
When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select Push for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com.
Well, this is Bishop Tavis Grant, the Acting National Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, along with National Executive Director of Push Excel, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson. You know, as we commemorate and remember the work and legacy of Dr. King, we sit here in what has historically been established as a landmark here in Chicago, Dr. King's workshop here at 50th and Drexel. It's the national headquarters, international headquarters of what was once Operation Push, now Rainbow Push Coalition. And we want to talk about the legacy and leadership of Dr. King, having started SCLC in the South and sending Reverend Jackson here to the Midwest. Many people don't know the rich legacy and the deep historical content of Dr. King in Chicago, Reverend Wilson. I mean, it's very impactful.
It is. Dr. King, I think, did 4 things when he visited Chicago. One, when he sent Reverend Jackson here, it was the Operation Breadbasket, keep a slice of bread in the black community. That was the Northern Initiative. And as you remember, Reverend Jackson organized Buy Black campaigns, but he also organized campaigns challenging corporate America to open up opportunities for African-American owned businesses, contractors, suppliers, and manufacturers. So that's how we got hair care products, black hair care products initially. You could only get them at the beauty shop or the barber shop. If your beautician didn't sell it, you couldn't buy it. So Johnson Products, the Ultra Sheen, was all through beauty shops and barber shops. And we had 6 black hair care distributors at one time. Well, we lost all of that when we opened up our products being sold in Walgreens, Walmart, and other retail stores. So the Economic Justice Campaign was one. And then the big issue Dr. King came here to deal with, at one time we were going to school in what we call Willis wagons. Remember the trailers that contractors use when they're building something on a site? Well, our schools were so overcrowded in many parts of the black community, they had us attending school in these trailers. And they extended the school day, so some children in elementary school would start at 11 o'clock and go to 6 o'clock at night. And so there was an objection to us being put in these little Willis wagons, your whole classroom outside the regular building, and dealing with the overcrowded schools. Instead of dispersing students throughout a city, we were operating as a segregated city.
Well, blacks that moved here from the South thought that there would be a greater opportunity for segregation than in the South because they saw New York City on the East Coast, Los Angeles on the West Coast. And so, you know, it became a natural track from Jackson, Mississippi, from Tupelo, Mississippi, from Memphis, Tennessee, Little Rock, Arkansas, to take 65, a 5-7, and come all the way north, and yet deal with a totally different type of racism, institutionalized racism that was educational, it was employment-based.
And it was housing.
And it was housing.
And so you remember part of it when Dr. King came to Chicago on the housing crisis. We had the worst slums in America, only comparable to New York, I think, at that time. And so Dr. King, to dramatize the plight of the homeless, he spent some time in one of the worst slums on the west side, on Hamlin. You from the west side?
Yes.
The best side, they say. Well, he and Mrs. King moved into this little place where roaches and rats were living.
And these were areas that were designated for black people.
Yeah, we were isolated in certain communities. There was a time when black people in Chicago could not move past south of 63rd Street, couldn't go west of Halsted.
Couldn't go north of Madison.
Nope. You had your little area and you had to stay in your place. And so I remember Dr. King trying to integrate communities, Marquette Park, Gage Park. We could not attend high schools outside of our little cordon off area. It was very much like South Africa.
And I don't think that when we look at the history and the photographs and the video from Marquette Park and others, even the meeting that Dr. King had with Mayor Daley, people don't know the tension, the fact that Dr. King was locked out of black churches, black leaders were paid, and if not threatened, not to support Dr. King, and it reverberated into places like Gary, Indiana, and in Milwaukee. It reverberated across the Midwest as if there was this real template on this is the way we're going to deal with Dr. King in the North, and it started in Chicago and was very weaponized at a time where, unlike in the South, Dr. King was beloved, accepted, respected. In the North, it was a totally different, means by which of moving around the black community, because he had never been like systematically locked out.
And I mean, the stuff he would have these marches in Gage Park and Marquette Park, just talking about opening up the process for blacks to buy property there or to rent property. You couldn't even rent in these neighborhoods. That's why Chicago still is the most segregated city in America. And Dr. King was fighting against that tension that said, you can't live here. We could not move to Bridgeport where the mayor lived. And to see people living in black people living in Bridgeport today is amazing. It's just amazing to me. And the young people say, I'm going to get out. I'm going to get out.
Or Marquette Park.
They go to school in Marquette Park. They attend Gage Park High School. For me, it's progress, but it's shocking when you look back.
Well, again, we were polarized, institutionalized with a political economic structure. I mean, again, the black middle class was teachers, firemen, police, postal workers, all right, who also were part of this legacy of faith-based institutions. Fellowship Baptist Church, Liberty Baptist Church, Shiloh Baptist Church, Mount Pisgah Baptist Church, Friendship Baptist Church. So, again, there was this systematic approach to dealing with Dr. King to try to marginalize, and I think the unintended consequence is he grew, particularly amongst youth and nationalists who were located here in Chicago that embraced Dr. King as a radical.
Well, you think about it, and all of the churches across Chicago, there are only about 7 pastors who embraced Dr. King when he was alive. Now, everybody celebrates the King holiday.
Yes.
And King was my man.
However,
only he could not go and preach or speak at any of these churches. As a matter of fact, he was removed from one church, J.H. Jackson's church, at gunpoint when the ministers were meeting.
Absolutely.
You don't belong here, and with a gun. So
the drum major of peace removed by guns at a preacher's meeting.
Yes, at a preacher's meeting, not just the people. It was the preacher. So he dealt with nonviolence. He dealt with economic justice, and he dealt with education. He could not imagine children in the North. This is not the poor South. Children in the North having overcrowded schools, having inadequate resources in our schools here. Because if you were up north, you were supposed to be really much better. And when they looked at the racism, the segregation in Chicago, it was like, this is worse than down south. Because down south, a rich white person would live across the road, so to speak, from a poor farmer. You just knew he was rich because the size of the house was very different. You knew you were living in one level structure. So Dr. King was trying to open up opportunities for all of us when he launched the campaigns in Chicago. And Reverend Jackson, I believe, has really been consistent in implementing the legacy
Well, you
of Dr.
talk
King.
about sending him here.
Mhm.
I
Well
don't
said.
know, you know, the methodology of Dr. King, and oftentimes with our iconic figures and our legends, we attribute brilliance and genius to them. It may not have necessarily been that as much as it was fate and maybe the hand of God.
Hand of God.
And Jackson, Reverend Jackson being here, being young, being vibrant, being innovative, a risk taker of epic proportion, not one of them, not one of the classmen of the city, and yet when you talk about John H. Johnson or Sinstack at the Chicago Defender, you know, you had people who had not normally been connected to the radical to the movement, all right, at all. And here comes this young organizer, Jesse Jackson, out of nowhere, all right, assigned by Dr. King to do a slice of bread, Operation Breadbasket. It was seismic in that, you know, the only person seemingly who could control Jesse Jackson was not Mayor Daley, it was Dr. King.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't care anything about Daley. And I guess when you're young, you're fearless.
Indeed.
I mean, you just do stuff. You see kids that jump off a high hill when they're young, they would not do that at 40, 50, or 60. They look down, that looks a little bit too far.
And I don't think people know, you know, a peer at that time was a Fred Hampton. A peer at that time was a Bobby Rush or a Bobby Steele. You know, these were Reverend Jackson's peers. These were people that operated and orbited in a different historical universe.
And so here you have this young guy who's not even been ordained. He's attending seminary. He's not ordained pastor, none of that. And he goes to the leading Baptist church in the city, hearing Reverend Evans on the radio, and decides this is where he's going to connect. This is going to be his base of operation. I didn't know.
And his church gets shut down.
Yeah, and gets shut down because he invites Dr. King.
Indeed.
To talk to Reverend Evans, and so now the church is, the building campaign for the church is shut down for 7 years. The new church just stood in girders, and they still worship in the little church because Reverend Evans had principles that he would not bow to Daley. So here you have this young preacher who says, we're going to deal with keeping a slice of bread in the black community. We're going to fight for educational excellence for every child. No child should be left behind without a quality education. He even, Reverend Jackson being the he even fought for our teachers. Black teachers were not certified. They used to just move them at will, and he made them grandfather our teachers in to the union. That's why when we see a Stacey Gates and before her Karen Lewis as the head of the teachers union, and before her
Jackie Vaughn.
That's so much progress, but it started here at Push.
Well, you know, I was talking to someone the other day about Charlie Hayes.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a plethora of leaders. We didn't have the volume and the template of leaders that we have today across the city of Chicago and across the country. And you look at, you know, you couldn't have planned having a black bank in Chicago. You couldn't have planned having a formidable black middle class in Chicago that were, you know, seemingly marginalized and demoralized by institutionalized racism. And then here comes Jesse Jackson with I Am Somebody.
And he organizes all these disconnected people.
Like a roving organization.
He said, look,
meet
I
in
want
this church.
all teachers, I need you to meet me on Monday night.
Yeah.
I'm just saying what night. It could have been Tuesday. Teachers met. Then if you have a business and you want to do business with anybody in Chicago, including the city, you meet us on Saturday morning. And we didn't know we made Grow Fresh orange juice. We didn't know we made Stewart's bleach. We didn't know that we had 6 black banks at one time. So when I see no black banks in the city of Chicago, I am troubled by the progress we've made, but by our refusal as a people to stay focused on going forward. We should have We should have the largest black bank in America because we had 6.
Well, I mean, again, and I hope that you can appreciate as we kind of lay this out in a historical setting to understand why the passion for the work of Reverend Jackson is so infused in us, having experienced it for these past 50 plus years, knowing that the potential is still there. We haven't, though we have had some victories and some defeats. We've had, let me help the songwriter, we had more good days than we've had bad days.
And then I wonder how people keep saying, I don't know what y'all do. The one way you can find out is come and help us. If you see we're not doing something that you think we should be doing, I hear business people, they ain't doing nothing for me. What do you want us to do? Because when Reverend Jackson convened those black business people, they came every week. It wasn't too busy to not come and gather together to figure out how we could promote their products, how we could open a door in corporate America for their products or goods or services. Black lawyers came here because they did not have access to the corporate legal opportunity. They didn't have access to university opportunities. When I go and Bishop go, we go to any corporation, the first question we ask, who are your lawyers, who are your accountants?
Professional services.
Who does your marketing and advertising? And then we go to media companies, want to know how many blacks are your camera people, producers and directors and so forth. As we fight for you, we fight harder if we knew what you needed.
And that's the beauty of the work of Reverend Jackson, so needle and thread in relationship to Dr. King, you understanding that the legacy and leadership that is currently in civil rights does not happen overnight. You just don't arrive at a position of leadership. There's a matriculation and a growth in it, and the perpetual aspect of the work in a progressive fashion affords us to do this work each and every day. And so as we celebrate Dr. King on Monday across the country, it indeed it has a lot to do with now the life and legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson, in that his unrelentless passion for and fight and vigor for this, even in all that he deals with on a personal level, it is just as strong today as it was then. When we talk about economic justice, we talk about what happened this past week on the Capitol, and of course, Jonathan Luther Jackson is now Congressman Jackson. We look at Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader now, soon will be the majority leader when they take back over the House. Unprecedented. Absolutely. And when Dr. King being in Chicago, maybe 9 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, now 59 members, and African Americans in key positions in the federal government, but not just there, state government.
State, city, and county. When Dr. King was alive, he never met a black mayor, not one, not even the mayor of Atlanta. There was no black mayor across the South, the 11 southern states. And yet, at our Dr. King Scholarship breakfast, we're going to honor an 18-year-old mayor.
From Earl, Arkansas.
Earl, Arkansas.
Of all places.
18 years old. Who would have thought that a young black man would decide that he could run and win an office? That's the impact of Dr. King and Reverend Jackson continuing his mission. When I think about education, Dr. King spoke in Philadelphia, blueprint. What is your blueprint for life? Well, it is you have to do the best you can educationally in school. And then the second part of it is, are you engaged in your community? What are you doing for the least of these? How do you help those who are homeless and hungry? And Bishop, one of the things we're looking to do going forward from our breakfast, which is January 16th at 8 o'clock, is we got to deal with homeless students. It's unfair for us to expect a homeless student to achieve at their best when they have to figure out every single day, where am I going to sleep tonight? What will I eat today? And when we have these winter breaks, spring breaks, where do homeless children break to?
75% of our kids, our children in public schools, are 75% of those who receive free lunch. And that's their main meal of the day. And so when they're out of school, they're out of a meal. And I think it's so important, Reverend Wilson, with the work that you're doing with Push Excel, with our STEM, with our HBCU tour, aiding and assisting students all throughout the year, our multi-million-dollar scholarship program, and then all of the initiatives that we have going on. You talk about the significance of being able to do that now. I mean, because the people, I don't want you all to think that this is a easy lift. It is an incredible heavy lift.
90% of the parents we serve can't afford to put their children in a after school or Saturday school program where they would learn STEM, financial literacy, where they would learn how to speak correctly. They will learn oratory. And we're trying to provide that not just for the children in Chicago, but wherever they are. We can do it virtually. We're teaching science, technology, engineering, and math. Our children must know how to program a drone. They must know how to design a game, not just play video games.
Electrification, these EV vehicles and whatnot is a thing of the future. It's here to stay.
They're going to have to be able to program them, artificial intelligence. When you go to a Ford plant or any plant in America, robots are lifting the vehicles, they're lifting things, they're bringing products to the line just in time for it to be loaded into a car or whatever they're manufacturing. That requires people who are skilled. And so what am I saying? You say, well, I don't live in Chicago. You don't have to. You need to invest in Push Excel. We tax exempt. You can get your tax credits by giving to Push Excel. I don't need you to teach the children. I need you to support the program. No child should say, I wish I could go to college, but my parents can't afford it. Every child should have a right to a public education, a free college education, in my opinion. They do it in other countries, so we need to be pushing for that. You've been talking about student loan debt.
And it's incredible.
Forgiveness.
And eradicating it in a way that frees up millions of students and their families across the country. $140 trillion industry that exists in that space of banks, lenders, collection agencies, and the schools, the institutions that have taken these much needed dollars from these families and have wrapped them around an incarcerated form of debt that is a cycle because it goes from generation to generation.
Well, first of all, if you have student loan debt, you can't buy property, you can't buy a car, you have a limited access to basic needs. And you graduate from college or you may have an advanced degree.
Yes.
These kids are graduating with $200,000 in debt. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. And you can't pay it off because the interest is constantly accumulating and you hate to run to the phone and answer the phone because you know the debt is there. Most young people can't afford to be married because you marry in debt. I see, all these little shows, married to a doctor, married to this. No, you marry in debt.
You listen, I want you to go to www.rainbowpush.org, hit that Push Excel tab, and listen, you can even contribute to the breakfast in a very special way. Text PUSH to 41444, and you can give a $150 donation, and we'll make sure a student sits in that seat in your name and in your honor for that contribution. The work that Reverend Jesse Jackson has done and Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson does as the National Executive Director and her board is phenomenal. Multi-million-dollar giveaway in scholarships, resources, and support to students all over America. And if you've got a student that is looking for a scholarship, they'll be doing a release real soon, and you'll be able to apply for one of these incredible scholarships. But until then, in between now and then, you can give and you can contribute and you can help us keep hope alive.
And to Bishop's point, every one of you that are watching this broadcast, you see it every week and you talk about whatever, I need you to think about, I'm going to invest today in the education of a child. And as Bishop said, you could give $150 to have somebody attend the breakfast. But if I had 10,000 people that watch this broadcast, just give $100 or more, because I want to invest in education. You can just text MLK 23 241-444. Just text it and give. Don't wait for somebody. You got to call nobody. Just, we even take Cash App. But we need you to give. Some people can give time. Some people can give talent. All of us can give something. We had one man that was joining. He give push. What did he do? $100.40, 50 cents every week.
Yeah.
So you figure 52 weeks. He had given us more than $50.
Your time, your talent, and your treasure helps us in more ways than one. And the incredible work that Reverend Jeanette Wilson does with Push Excel speaks for itself. Listen, we can't wait to see you again. Between now and then, don't forget, you are somebody, and we're keeping hope alive.
Please join the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. and Push Excel co-chair, the Honorable Judge Greg Mathis and the Push Excel family for the 33rd Annual Martin Luther King Breakfast on January 16, 2023. Honorees include the original Dream Girl on Broadway actress and Emmy Award winner Cheryl Lee Ralph, along with the Honorable Illinois Secretary of State and founder of the Jesse White Tumblers, Mr. Jesse White. Other honorees include Commissioner Natalie Hall, activist Gentoo Brown, the Chicago Inventors Organization, and Chance Light Education. Please join us in celebrating the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at our Blueprint for Life breakfast on Monday, January 16th from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Marriott Marquis, Chicago. Tickets can be purchased at rainbowpush.org. We look forward to seeing you there.
We are Sanctuary. We are a sanctuary.
When I think of Rainbow Push, I think of two words: social justice.
Education advocacy.
Political empowerment.
Freedom and equality.
Corporate partnership.
Stop the violence. Save the children.
Don't get in. Shut it down. If we don't get in, shut it down.
Political change.
Inclusion, evolution.
Progress, justice.
Jesse Jackson.
Keep hope. Keep hope alive. Keep hope. Keep hope alive.
We want to be bridges to end these cultural gaps.
Going forward. By hope. Not backwards. By fear.